New York was dying. It wasn't screaming, it wasn't convulsing, it was just drowning. Hurricane Isabel had draped the city in a wet, suffocating shroud. The rain wasn't just water, it was a wall, lead-heavy, cold, infinite. It drummed against the glass of my queen's apartment with a rhythmic insistence that mocked the very idea of shelter. Outside, the downpour turned the neon signs into bleeding watercolors, red, blue, dirty yellow, the colors of cheap motels and spent shell casings on a hooker's thigh. I sat on the edge of a sagging sofa. A spring dug into my hip, but I barely felt it. There was a hurricane inside my head, too. Tinnitus, my personal demon, my high-frequency torture. It wasn't just a sound, it was a drill, a rusty, dull bit boring into my temple, grinding through the corpus callosum and exiting somewhere near the base of my skull. The VA doctors called it acoustic trauma. I called it shut the hell up. My hands rested on my knees. The right one was trembling, a fine, nasty tremor, like an alcoholic reaching for his first shot of the morning. On the coffee table, amidst Chinese takeout cartons and spent shell casings, stood a bottle, orange plastic, white cap, chlorpromazine, do not exceed dosage. Funny. I shook 2 pills into my palm, thought for a second, shook out a third. My knuckles turned white as I threw them back, swallowing dry. The bitter, chalky taste scraped my throat. Just 20 minutes, that's all I needed. The world would turn to cotton. The sound would fade. My hands would stop dancing. I'd become a functional unit again, instead of a piece of meat with faulty wiring. Through the wall, where the drywall was thinner than cheap toilet paper, the TV mumbled. Mr. Kowalski, my neighbor. "And the letter A, is there an A?" the host of Wheel of Fortune screamed. I closed my eyes. Kowalski was a fixture, 75 years old, smelling of mothballs, peppermint, and loneliness. He wore knitted cardigans that looked like they remembered the Eisenhower administration. Once he brought me cookies so hard they could crack a molar. "Eat, Alex, you're too skinny," he'd said in that gravelly voice. A sweet old man, a relic from an era in which people actually looked each other in the eye. "Spin that wheel," came the muffled shout from next door. I checked my watch, 9:14 p.m. Right now, he'd be brewing Earl Grey. At 9:15 sharp, the kettle would whistle. But the whistle never came.
Instead, the TV cut out abruptly. Not switched off with a remote. It sounded like someone had ripped the cord out of the socket, taking a chunk of the wall with it. Silence lasted 2 seconds, and then thud. A dull, heavy impact. The sound of a body weighing at least 200 pounds hitting the floor. Dead weight. Kowalski barely weighed 130 soaking wet. I froze. The tinnitus in my head shrieked, jumping an octave. That wasn't the old man falling. That was the sound of something tactical. "Shit," I whispered. The tremor in my hands was replaced by something else, cold, a sticky professional cold that floods your veins when you realize the fecal matter has hit the oscillator. I reached under the sofa, my fingers closed around the grip. A Gen 3 Glock 17, worn, finish rubbed down to the metal in the slide, but internally sterile. I racked the slide. The clack-clack of a round chambering was the only music I liked. I stood up. The world tilted slightly. The pills hadn't hit yet, but the adrenaline had. Screw the pills. My neighbor was getting robbed. Some junkie probably thought the old man had a stash under his mattress. I wasn't a hero. I just wanted quiet, and quiet required that people stop murdering pensioners next door. I moved to the door, pressed my ear against it. Nothing but the rain and the scream in my head. Inhale, exhale. I opened my door and slipped into the hallway.
The bulb flickered, casting twitchy shadows on the peeling paint. Kowalski's door was ajar. The lock hadn't been picked, it had been drilled, cleanly, quietly, professionally. Junkies don't work like that. I brought the Glock up to eye level, gripping it with both hands to compensate for the shakes. "Mr. Kowalski?" I whispered, nudging the door open with the toe of my boot. I expected a mess, overturned drawers, a gutted mattress, a terrified old man. Reality punched me in the gut harder than any fist. The apartment was pristine, except for the 3 bodies decorating the beige carpet in the living room. I stepped inside, sweeping the perimeter. Clear. I looked down. These weren't burglars. Black tactical gear, no insignias, mole vests loaded with mags, Loa boots, military lacing, balaclavas. Next to one lay a suppressed HK MP5, expensive, reliable hardware, German quality for wet work. The first guy's throat was cut from ear to ear, surgical, deep, severing the artery. Blood wasn't spraying anymore, it was lazily soaking into the carpet, a thick crimson stain. The second guy had a broken neck, head twisted at an unnatural angle, dead eyes staring at a porcelain shepherdess on the dresser. The third guy had a knitting needle sticking out of his eye socket. "Mother of God!" I exhaled. "You forgot to close the door, Alex. There's a draft." The voice was calm, scratchy, elderly, but devoid of fear. I spun around, leveling the pistol at the armchair in the corner. Mr. Kowalski was sitting there, legs crossed. He was wearing his favorite oatmeal-colored cardigan, only now there was a small red splatter on the sleeve. A cup of tea steamed on the table in front of him. In his right hand, he held a stiletto, a narrow, predatory piece of steel that he was leisurely wiping with a handkerchief. "Mr. Kowalski?" My voice cracked. The squeal in my ears was becoming unbearable, drowning out the rain. The old man looked up, watery blue eyes, faded like old denim. But the gaze was sharp. There was no dementia in there. There was calculation. "Lower the piece, son," he said, folding the handkerchief. "You've got no trigger discipline, and your fingers are shaking. You'll shoot my ficus." Who were these people? I didn't lower the gun. My brain refused to reconcile the sweet old neighbor with the corpses of elite mercenaries. "Rude guests," Kowalski took a sip of tea, "came without an invitation, looking for things that don't belong to them." He looked toward the window. The storm was raging, but the old man seemed to see something through the sheets of water. "They aren't alone, Alex. This was just the scout team. The cleanup crew will be here in—" He glanced at the cuckoo clock on the wall. "30 seconds." "What?" I blinked stupidly. "Get down," he said casually. The sound of shattering glass coincided with his last syllable. Something black and metallic, the size of a soda can, flew through the window. It hit the floor and rolled toward my feet. Flashbang. Instinct worked faster than thought. I dove behind the overturned sofa, covered my ears, and opened my mouth to equalize the pressure. Bang! The world exploded in white light. Even with my eyes closed, I was blinded. The sound, my tinnitus, previously a whistle, shifted into a jet engine roar. Pain pierced my skull like a hot needle. Nausea hit me. I lost orientation. Where was the floor? Where was the ceiling? Through the ringing, I heard dull pops. Foot, foot, foot. Suppressed fire. Glass crunching under heavy boots. Acrid smoke filled my lungs. Tear gas. "Up, Alex!" A hand grabbed me by the scruff of the neck. The grip was iron. I opened my streaming eyes. Kowalski. He stood over me, covering his face with a wet rag. In his other hand, he held a captured MP5. "Movement is life," he rasped. "Stay here, and you become part of the furniture." We bailed out the kitchen window onto the rusted fire escape. The wind immediately slapped my face, drenching me in ice water. The rain was so dense it felt like we were underwater. Kowalski moved terrifyingly fast. No shuffling, no shortness of breath. He vaulted the railing and slid down the ladder like a 20-year-old parkour artist. I followed, stumbling and coughing up gas. "Down! Now!" he yelled, but the wind tore the words away. Ping! A bullet sparked off the railing, an inch from my hand. I slammed myself against the wet brick wall. "Sniper!" I screamed, though I could barely hear my own voice. "Roof across the alley!" On the roof of the warehouse opposite, through the veil of rain, I saw a dull glint. Optics. I raised the Glock. My hands were dancing. The pills, the shock, the cold, the sights were vibrating like crazy. I pulled the trigger. The bullets went wide, chipping brick a yard away from the shooter. "Useless!" Kowalski was suddenly beside me. He didn't hide. He just stood up, feet wide for stability on the slick metal, raised the MP5. No fuss, one fluid motion, stock into the shoulder, cheek weld. "Wind 8 meters per second, full value, left to right," he muttered, as if reading a lecture. A short burst, 3 rounds. Tat-tat-tat. Opposite us, a figure jerked, dropped the rifle, and slowly, like a bad movie death, tipped over the parapet, falling into the dark alley below. I stared at the old man, mouth agape. He lowered the weapon, checking the chamber. "HK makes good toys," he noted, "but the balance is front-heavy. Let's go, Alex. The ground floor is about to get hot." We hit the alley. The water was ankle-deep. Rats fleeing the flood huddled against dumpsters. Sirens wailed in the distance, but for now, that was just regular cops responding to shots fired. The real problems were on our tail. "Car?" Kowalski asked. "Around the corner. Old Chevy." I patted my pocket, feeling the keys. "Lead." We sprinted to the car. I looked back. Smoke billowed from my apartment windows. Tactical flashlight beams were already cutting through the rain on the fire escape. "Faster," the old man urged. I jumped into the driver's seat. The interior smelled of vanilla air freshener and stale tobacco. Kowalski took the passenger seat, resting the submachine gun on his knees as naturally as if it were a cane. Key in the ignition. Turn. The engine sneezed, coughed, and died. "Come on, baby. Not now." "Starter's dying," Kowalski commented. "Bendix gear is worn." "I know," I barked. "Try 2. Vroom! The V8 roared to life. I slammed it into gear, and we peeled out, leaving black rubber streaks on the wet asphalt. The rear window shattered inward a second later. I ducked, yanked the wheel right, drifting through the turn. The rear end swung out, nearly clipping a parked car. I corrected at the last second, taking the side mirror off a dumpster. Headlights appeared in the rear-view mirror, 2 black SUVs, xenon lights cutting into my eyes. "We've got company," I said through gritted teeth. The ringing in my ears was spiking again. Stress was feeding the demon. "I see them." Kowalski was calm as a Hindu cow. He rolled down the window, letting the rain and wind howl into the cabin. "Keep the wheel steady." He leaned out to his waist. The MP5 chattered. Hot brass casings rained onto my shoulder, burning my neck through my wet t-shirt. The lead SUV swerved. A spiderweb crack appeared on its windshield, but they didn't stop. "That's armored glass. 9mm won't scratch them." "I'm not shooting the glass, Alex. I'm shooting the driver's nerves. Psychology. When lead flies at you, you blink." An intersection loomed ahead. The light turned red. Cross-traffic was heavy. "Hold on," I floored. We blew the red light. Screeching brakes, horns blaring, a taxi spinning out. We made it through by a miracle. The SUVs behind us didn't brake either, punting a sedan out of the way like a bowling pin. Police lights flashed on the dashboard ahead. A cruiser was blocking the road. "Damn it! Cops!" I slammed on the brakes. "Don't stop," Kowalski commanded. He raised his wrist. He was wearing a watch. At first glance, a cheap mechanical piece you buy at a gas station. Worn leather strap, cloudy glass. He pressed the crown and twisted the bezel. The dial suddenly went dark and lit up with a toxic green digital code. From the speakers of my old stereo, instead of static, came a clear, metallic dispatcher's voice. Attention all units. Code 1013, officer down, Sector 42, 5th Avenue. All available units respond to Sector 42 immediately. The patrol car ahead, which was about to block us, suddenly lit up its cherries, wailed its siren, and pulled a U-turn, speeding away from us. The road was open. I exhaled, flying past stunned pedestrians. My hands were shaking so hard the steering wheel vibrated. What was that? I wheezed. You hacked the police dispatch with a wristwatch? Kowalski settled back into his seat, brushing raindrops off his cardigan. He pressed a button on the watch, and it returned to being a cheap analog timekeeper. Priority reassignment, he said. The system is old, full of holes. I just told them they were needed elsewhere. I looked at him. Streetlights flashed across his profile. Wrinkles, gray hair, liver spots, and the eyes of a killer. Who the hell are you? I asked. You're not a pensioner. You're not ex-military. You hack city networks on the fly and stack special forces guys like firewood. Kowalski was silent. He fished a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, cheap, unfiltered, struck a match on the sole of his boot, the cabin filled with the smell of harsh tobacco. Ever hear the legend of the Butcher of Budapest? He asked quietly, watching the ember glow. I almost hit a lamppost. That's a myth, I said, a ghost story for rookies at Quantico, a phantom assassin who worked Eastern Europe in the 90s. Nobody ever saw his face. Interpol closed the file 20 years ago due to lack of evidence. Believed dead. Believed, Kowalski corrected, blowing smoke out the broken window. It's convenient being dead, Alex. No taxes, no questions. Nobody looks for an old man feeding pigeons and watching game shows. A cold sweat broke out on my back, despite the heater blasting. Sitting next to me wasn't a neighbor. Sitting next to me was a weapon of mass destruction that every intelligence agency on Earth had been hunting for decades. Why are you here? My voice was hoarse. Why live next to me? Fate, he answered evasively. The ringing in my ears became intolerable. Black spots swam before my eyes. The squeal drilled into my brain, triggering nausea. I took one hand off the wheel and dug into my pocket for the pill bottle. I needed to drown it out. I needed silence. Fingers touched plastic. Kowalski's hand, soft-looking but hard as granite, covered mine. He took the bottle. "Give it back," I growled. "It hurts. You don't understand." "I understand more than you think." Kowalski tossed the bottle out the window, into the night, under the wheels of our pursuers. "Are you crazy?" I screamed. "I can't function. My hands are shaking. I hear the drill." "You need clarity, Alex," he said, staring right into my eyes. There was steel in his gaze. "The chemicals make you a vegetable. Right now, you need to be a wolf, because the hunt has just begun." He pulled something flat, wrapped in oil paper, from his inside pocket. "I stole something from the Red Legion," he said. "Not money, not gold. Data. The kind that can topple half the governments in this rotten world. And now they want it back, at any cost." He unwrapped the package. It wasn't a flash drive. It wasn't a hard drive. It was an old audio cassette. Clear plastic, brown tape. On the label, in sprawling handwriting, was one word: Origin. "Welcome to the game, neighbor," the ghost said, slotting a fresh mag into the MP5. "Floor it. We need to get to the Navy Yard." I looked at the cassette, at the old man, at the road slick with rain and impending violence. The squeal in my ears hadn't gone anywhere, but now, cutting through it, was another sound, the sound of my own heart. I slammed the pedal to the... "We need to move," I rasped, looking around. "They're tracking the car." Kowalski was already moving. He wove between stacks of rusted chemical barrels, checking valves, rigging wires. "Let them track it," he threw back without turning. "In chess, sometimes you sacrifice a pawn to draw out the queen." "We aren't playing chess. We're about to get killed," I pulled out my phone. Screen cracked, but it had signal. One contact, the only number I knew by heart besides the pizza place. Sarah Mills, FBI. "Don't do it, Alex," Kowalski's voice echoed hollowly from the shadows. "She's my handler. She's the only one who can get us out. She's clean." In this game, nobody is clean. There are the living and there are the dead. I didn't listen. I hit dial. The rings felt infinitely long, every heartbeat thumping in my temples. "Volkov?" Sarah's voice was professionally cold, but I caught the tension. "Where the hell are you? The whole city is on alert. Reports say you killed 3 feds." "They weren't feds, Sarah. They were mercs!" I screamed into the phone. "I'm with Kowalski. He's not who he says he is. He's the butcher. We're at the docks, Hangar 42. We need extraction. Now!" Pause. A long, heavy pause. "The butcher?" she asked. Her tone shifted, became transactional. "You're sure?" "Yes, he hacked the police band with a wristwatch. Sarah, send a chopper. We can't hold out long." "Sit tight, Alex. I'm scrambling a team. 10 minutes." She hung up. I slid down the side of a shipping container, wiping sweat from my forehead. "She's coming," I said, feeling the relief wash over me. "She'll get us out." Kowalski stepped out of the shadows. He was wiping his hands on a rag smelling of grease. He looked at me with the same sad smile he used when offering me oatmeal cookies. "You're a good kid, Alex," he said softly, "but you're an idiot. The system you serve doesn't fix broken tools, it scraps them." He went back to the barrels. I saw him connecting wires to a small device with a blinking diode. "What are you doing?" "Preparing a warm welcome in case your guardian angel turns out to be fallen." 8 minutes passed. The sound of rain was drowned out by a growing roar, rhythmic, heavy thumping of rotors slicing the humid air. Whump, whump, whump. The sound of salvation. A black helicopter with no markings hovered over the open apron in front of the hangar. A searchlight blinded us, carving us out of the darkness. Rotor wash kicked up clouds of water spray.
The bird touched down. The side doors slid open. Sarah Mills stepped out first. She wore a tactical vest over her pantsuit and a headset. In her hands, an assault rifle. Behind her poured 4 operators in full kit. Not FBI, no yellow letters, just black Kevlar and faceless masks. I stepped forward, raising my hands. "Sarah, over here!" She stopped 20 yards away. The searchlight framed her silhouette. She didn't lower her weapon. "Where is the asset?" Her voice, amplified by the chopper's PA system, cut through the storm. "He's inside," I yelled. "Sarah, what's going on? Who are these guys?" She didn't even look at me. She made a hand signal, a sharp, cutting gesture. "Asset, secure, witness, sanitize." The operators raised their rifles. My heart skipped a beat. The world froze for a second. I saw dry raindrops suspended in the air. Sarah, my handler, the woman I drank coffee with after debriefings, the woman who approved my leave. "Get down!" Kowalski's roar drowned out the rotors. The old man wasn't in the hangar. He was on top of a shipping container next to me. In his hand was a detonator, a little box like a garage door opener. He pressed the button. Kaboom! It wasn't an explosion. It was the creation of hell. The chemical barrels Kowalski had rigged detonated simultaneously. A fireball, orange and black, laced with poison and burning at 1,000 degrees, erupted from the hangar mouth, sweeping everything in its path. The blast wave hit me in the chest like a giant sledgehammer. I was thrown backward into a maze of containers. I hit metal spine first, and the lights went out. I opened my eyes, but the world didn't come back. Only the picture returned. No sound at all. The blast had blown out my eardrums. Even the familiar tinnitus was gone. Just absolute, vacuum, dead silence. It was more terrifying than any scream. I felt like a fish in a tank that had been hit with a hammer. I tried to stand. The ground wobbled.
Or maybe I wobbled. I saw fire, burning fuel spilled across the concrete, dancing on the puddles. Black smoke billowed up to the hole-riddled roof. In the gateway, against the backdrop of the inferno, shadows flickered. They moved fast, pro-style. Sarah's cleaners. They survived. Or it was a second wave. I saw a flash, a bright, short star at the end of a black barrel. Then a puff of concrete dust near my knee. I didn't hear the shot. I didn't hear the bullet. I only felt death creeping up on me in a silent movie. Instincts, beaten into me by years of training, took over. Brain off, body on. I rolled behind a blue container, gripped the Glock. An operator appeared in the aisle. I saw his mouth open, shouting into a radio. I saw brass ejecting from his rifle, spinning slowly in the air. I leveled the pistol, double tap. The operator jerked. His head snapped back, a spray of blood, black in this light, painting the container wall. He fell, silently, like a sack of laundry. I ran. Running in silence is surreal. You feel the impact of soles on concrete, feel your lungs tearing for air, feel your heart hammering against your ribs, but you hear nothing. Another figure rose ahead. A rifle butt swung. I couldn't dodge. The impact took me in the shoulder, knocking sparks from my eyes. I spun around, fell. The operator loomed over me, raising his barrel for the kill shot. I saw his eyes behind the tactical goggles, indifferent, empty. Suddenly, his head vanished. It just turned into a red mist. The body collapsed onto me, heavy and warm. Behind him stood Kowalski. He was shouting something at me. I saw his Adam's apple bobbing, the veins on his neck bulging, his face contorted in a scream, but I heard only silence. He grabbed my good arm and yanked me up, dragged me. The world blurred, containers, fire, shadows, darkness. I stumbled. The pain in my temples was unbearable. It wasn't sound pressure anymore. It was pressure. My skull felt like it was going to burst from the inside. We dove into a manhole. Darkness, dampness, the smell of sewage that I could taste but not hear splashing under my feet. Consciousness returned in fragments, like dead pixels on a screen. Light, harsh, surgical light from a cheap lamp. Smell, alcohol, bleach, and wet dog. I was lying on a metal table, cold stainless steel soaked through my wet clothes. Hearing returned slowly, painfully. First came a hum, low like a transformer box, then a grinding noise. "Don't hold on, Alex. No lidocaine, only kitty anesthesia, but the dose is too small for you." Kowalski's voice sounded like he was speaking through a long pipe. I tried to flinch. Pain pierced my shoulder like a hot poker. I screamed. The sound of my own voice seemed alien. "Don't move." The old man pinned me to the table with his elbow. In his hands was a needle, a curved surgical needle with black thread. He was stitching me up, just piercing the skin, pulling the edges of the jagged wound on my shoulder together. Shrapnel? Bullet? I didn't know. I only knew pain. "Breathe," he commanded, making another stitch. The skin crunched. "Pain is good. Pain means you're alive." We were in a basement. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with kibble, animal meds, cages, a veterinary clinic, another one of the ghosts' safe houses. Kowalski tied a knot, bit the thread with his teeth, and splashed alcohol on the wound. I hissed, arching my back. "Done. You'll live." I sat up, gripping the edge of the table to keep from falling. I was shivering. "Sarah," I rasped. "She betrayed us. She works for them." Kowalski was wiping his bloody hands on a towel. He walked to an old workbench covered in tools and picked up the package, the cassette. "She didn't betray you, Alex," he said, not turning around. "She was just doing her job, just like you." "What are you talking about?" The old man turned. In his hands was an old Sony Walkman, a bulky brick from the '80s. He inserted the tape, clicked the lid shut. "You asked who I am. You asked what this data is." He pressed play. "Listen." The player's speaker hissed. Through static, a voice cut through, young, confident, ruthless. "Target Senator neutralized. Distance 400 meters. No collateral. Time 0300. Awaiting extraction." My breath hitched. That voice. I knew that voice. Those intonations. That way of swallowing the ends of words. I backed away until my spine hit a cage where a dog whined. "That's my voice." Kowalski turned. 10 years ago. Operation in Budapest." "No," I shouted. "I've never been to Budapest. I was undercover in Miami. I was fighting cartels." The tape kept rolling. "Confirmation code, Omega Black. Operation status, stable. Ready for wipe procedure." "Reason for wipe?" I whispered. Kowalski clicked the player off. The silence in the basement became dense as water. "Program sleeper," he said harshly. "The syndicate doesn't hire hitmen. They grow them. They take talented kids, break their psyche, wipe their memories after every major operation, and upload a new legend." He walked up to me close. His face was old, tired, but his eyes burned with a fanatic fire. "Your tinnitus, Alex, that ringing that drives you up the wall, it's not blast trauma, it's a scar on the brain, a side effect of frequent wipes. Your hard drive is overheating." "You're lying," tears mixed with sweat on my face. "I remember my childhood. I remember school. I remember my mom."
Implanted memories. Standard package number 4. Happy childhood in the suburbs. You never had a mother, Alex. You're an orphan from a state home in Omsk. GRU picked you up when you were 6. I grabbed my head. The squeal in my ears returned. Now it sounded like an alarm. My world collapsed. My past crumbled into dust. I didn't know who I was. I was a void. "And you?" I looked up at him. "Who are you?" "I was your handler for 10 years. I pressed the button that turned you into a machine, and I pressed the button that erased your mind." Kowalski lowered his eyes. For the first time I saw something resembling shame. "But then the system decided to scrap you. Too many glitches. The tinnitus became a liability. The order was sanitize." "And you?" "I couldn't. You were the best. You were my masterpiece. And you became like a son to me. I faked your death, took you, wiped you clean one last time, and settled next door. I became the harmless neighbor to guard you from your past." I looked at him and couldn't breathe. The old man who gave me cookies. The old man who watched Wheel of Fortune. He was my creator, my tormentor, my savior. A crash came from upstairs. The front door of the clinic had been kicked in. They found us. Kowalski transformed instantly. The shame vanished. The butcher returned. He grabbed a metal auto-injector from the table, military grade. Inside swirled a cloudy yellowish liquid. "We have little time." He spoke fast. "They've locked down the block. Sarah won't stop. She knows you're living proof of the syndicate's crimes. This cassette, it's your history. If it hits the net, the syndicate falls." "I can't." I crawled into the corner on the floor. "I have nothing. I'm nobody. I don't even have memories." Kowalski grabbed me by the collar and shook me so hard my teeth clacked.
You have reflexes. You have skills we hammered into you for years. You are a weapon, Alex, the best weapon I ever made." He ripped the safety cap off the injector. "What is that?" I looked at the needle in horror. "Cocktail Berserker. Adrenaline, nootropics, and combat stimulants. It will give you your speed back. It will kill the pain. It will clear the tinnitus for 1 hour. But after, the crash might kill you. Your heart might not take it." Heavy footsteps and voices echoed from above. "Clear. Check the basement." "Choice is yours, Agent 47. Kowalski used my code name for the first time. "Die here like a sick dog, or go out there and make them pay for everything they stole from you." I looked at the scar on my shoulder, looked at my trembling hands. I remembered Sarah's smile when she gave the order to kill me. I remembered the void in my head. Rage, cold, pure rage began to rise from my stomach. They stole my life. They made me a puppet. I extended my arm. "Do it," I said. Kowalski didn't hesitate. He jammed the needle into my neck, right into the carotid, and depressed the plunger. Fire raced through my veins. The world snapped into focus. Colors became sharper, smells acrid. The trembling in my hands stopped instantly. And most importantly, silence. The tinnitus vanished. A crystal, ringing clarity took its place. I could hear the heart of a mouse in the wall. I could hear the leather of the SWAT boots squeaking on the floor above. I could hear Kowalski racking the bolt of his weapon. I stood up. No pain. I felt like the god of war. "Where are we going?" I asked. My voice was steady, like steel. "The Millennium Tower," Kowalski smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "We're going to upload this tape to the global feed. Let the world know who the sleepers are." "Time to die, son," he said, handing me a spare mag. "No." I slammed the mag into the Glock. "Time to kill." We didn't enter the lobby of the Millennium Tower like men. We entered like a natural disaster. Security downstairs, Red Legion's private army, didn't even have time to process what happened. I moved faster than the human eye could track. The Berserker cocktail had burned away my nerve endings, turning my blood into rocket fuel. My hands didn't shake. The tinnitus was gone. For the first time in years, there was absolute silence in my head. And in that silence, I heard the symphony of fear. Click of a safety, heartbeat of a guard, rustle of fabric as he raised his arm. Bang! I slid across the polished marble floor, slick with rainwater from our coats. 2 shots on the move. 2 casings chimed on the floor before the body hit. Kowalski followed. The old man didn't run. He flowed like mercury. He used my fire as cover, cleaning up the wounded with economical single shots to the head. We were a single organism, a 2-headed hound of war, off the leash. "Elevator's cut," Kowalski noted, glancing at the panel. "Shaft," I threw back. We pried open the doors of the service lift. The cab was on the upper floors, just cables and darkness going up 80 stories. "Winch," Kowalski pointed to the construction rig. "Hook up." We shot up the shaft at a speed that would burst a normal man's blood vessels. The wind screamed. We flew past floors, 10th, 20th, 50th. At the 60th, the cable snapped. Someone cut it from above. We started to fall. "Jump!" Kowalski yelled. In midair, in 0G, we kicked open the shaft doors on the 65th floor and rolled into a shell of an unfinished office. Concrete, dust, exposed plumbing. They were waiting for us. Muzzle flashes from the darkness looked like a rave strobe light. Bullets chipped the concrete columns, kicking up clouds of gray dust. I didn't hide. I entered the flow. The world slowed down. I saw the trajectories. I saw where the enemy was before they even pulled the trigger. I ran along the wall, pushed off a pillar, and in midair emptied both pistols into the tactical squad behind cover. I landed on my knees, reloaded in one motion, slamming mags against my belt, and opened fire again. It wasn't a fight, it was a dance, a brutal ballet of death. Kowalski covered my back. He was working a captured shotgun, turning enemies into mulch. "Up!" he roared. "Don't stop, Alex! The data!" We fought our way to the roof. The stairwells were choked with corpses. My clothes were soaked in blood, theirs and mine, but I felt no pain. The stimulant was peaking. I was a machine. I was perfect. 80th floor. The roof. No walls, just a bare concrete skeleton, steel beams, and a sky torn apart by lightning. Hurricane Isabel, here at 1,000 feet, roared like a wounded beast. The rain flew horizontally, stinging my face like buckshot. In the center of the terrace, under a single working floodlight, she stood. Sarah Mills. She wasn't hiding. She was wearing heavy assault armor, looking like a futuristic knight. In her hands, a heavy machine gun with a belt feed. "Game over, Alex." Her voice, amplified by her helmet speakers, drowned the thunder. "You're a defective unit. You've been written off." She opened fire. The heavy caliber tore the concrete like paper. Kowalski and I split. I rolled behind a stack of steel sheets. Bullets drummed against the metal, throwing sparks. "Distract her," Kowalski yelled through the storm. I leaned out and fired the Glock. Bullets pinged harmlessly off her chest plate. Sarah just laughed, swinging the barrel toward me. "You're pathetic. You don't even know who you are. You think you're human? You're just a set of reflexes wrapped in meat."
She pinned me down. My cover was disintegrating. A shard of concrete sliced my eyebrow, blinding one eye with blood. The stimulant was starting to fade. My hands were getting heavy again. I saw Kowalski crawling along a beam above her. The old man moved against the wind, in the rain, risking a fall into the abyss every second. In his hand was just a knife. I was out of ammo. Slide locked back. Sarah advanced. She walked toward me. Heavy boots shook the floor. Boom, boom, boom. "Look at me, Alex." She towered over me, leveling the machine gun in my face. "Your daddy can't save you. He used you to get to us. And now you both die." She started to squeeze the trigger. I saw the barrels begin to spin. "Hey, bitch!" a voice came from above. Sarah snapped her head up. Kowalski jumped. It was a leap of faith. A 75-year-old man put all the rage accumulated over 30 years of hiding into that jump. He crashed into her like a boulder. They hit the wet concrete. The machine gun fired into the sky, tracing a line of fire through the clouds. Kowalski drove the knife into the joint of her armor at the neck. Sarah howled, her armored gauntlet grabbing the old man by the throat. She was stronger. The exoskeleton gave her the power of a tank. She lifted him with one hand like a rag doll. "Die, old man," she rasped. They were standing on the very edge. Behind Sarah was nothing but the abyss of the New York night. Kowalski met my eyes. A lightning flash illuminated his face. It was beaten, bloody, but the eyes were smiling. It wasn't the look of a killer. It was the look of a father letting go of a child's hand as they learned to walk. "Alex," he shouted, "the transmitter, catch!" He spat a small flash drive from his mouth and tossed it toward me. In the same second, he let go of Sarah, and instead of trying to break free, he wrapped his legs around her waist and threw his weight backwards, into the void. Sarah lost her balance. The exoskeleton was top-heavy. Momentum worked against her. "No!" They toppled over the edge. I lunged forward, sliding on the wet concrete. I got there just in time to see them fall. Two locked bodies, spinning, vanishing into the veil of rain and neon light below. "Kowalski!" My scream drowned in a clap of thunder. I was alone, on top of the world, under the pouring rain. In my hand was the flash drive, the ghost's last gift. I stood up, my legs buckled. My heart hammered unevenly. The berserker was wearing off, and the crash promised to be ugly.
In the center of the floor stood the construction crew's temporary comms antenna, a high-gain transmitter. A limp to the terminal. My fingers wouldn't listen, slippery with blood. I jammed the drive into the port. The screen blinked. A command line appeared. Uploading data. Program sleeper. Archive Red Legion. Down below, on the streets, sirens wailed. I saw the strobe lights of hundreds of cars converging on the building. They were too late. Upload complete. Broadcasting to global feed. I slid down the base of the antenna. I looked at the city that had tried to kill me. Now this city would know the truth. I closed my eyes. I did it. I avenged myself. I avenged the old man. I was a hero. I was free. Mexico, 1 week later. The sun here was different. It didn't warm, it broiled. White sand blinded the eyes. Turquoise waves lazily rolled onto the shore. I sat in a lounge chair under a straw umbrella. I wore a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses. In my hand, a sweating bottle of Corona. The world seemed like paradise. The news had been buzzing for a week. Government resignations, arrests at the top of the FBI and CIA, the syndicate declared a terrorist organization. I was a ghost. They were looking for me, but here in Zihuatanejo, nobody cared. I pulled the old Sony Walkman from my pocket, the same one. I kept it. Kowalski hadn't finished listening to the tape in the clinic. There were about 5 minutes of recording left. I put on the headphones, pressed play. Tape hiss, the sound of rain. The recording was made long ago. And a voice, the familiar scratchy voice of my neighbor. Hello, Alex. If you're listening to this, I'm dead. Sarah is neutralized, and you're sitting somewhere on a warm beach, drinking a beer, thinking you won. I chuckled, taking a sip. The old man knew me too well. You think I saved you because I pitied you, because I got attached, because I saw you as a son. The pause on the tape dragged on. I could hear him taking a drag of a cigarette. Then the voice changed. The elderly rasp vanished. The warmth vanished. What remained was the cold, metallic timbre of a professional handler, the timbre of a man who issues liquidation orders. How naive you are, Agent 47. In our business, there is no room for sentiment. There are only assets and liabilities. The smile slid off my face. The beer bottle slipped from my fingers and fell into the sand.
Sarah Mills wasn't just working for the syndicate. She was my competition. She wanted my seat on the board of directors. I needed to remove her with hands that couldn't be traced back to me. Your hands. A chill swept over me, despite the 90-degree heat. The story about the kind neighbor? That was a script. I wrote it for 3 years. The cookies, the TV, the small talk about the weather. I was building a rapport, establishing trust. I waited until Sarah made her move, and when she came for me, I activated you. No, I whispered, that's not true. You saved me. The voice in the headphones continued, ruthlessly driving nails into the coffin of my soul. Tinnitus, you think that's trauma? Or a side effect of the wipe? No, you idiot. It's an implant, a microchip on the auditory nerve. It jams you, makes you weak, forces you to pop pills so you stay a compliant vegetable, until I enter the code. I remembered the syringe, the berserker cocktail. It didn't just give me strength, it disabled the jammer. You did the job, 47. You destroyed my competition. You leaked the data I needed leaked to reshape the market in my favor. I didn't die, Alex. On the 80th floor, I didn't fall. There was a safety net 2 floors down, window washer rigging. I knew the building schematics, but Sarah fell. I jumped up. The player dangled from my belt. You aren't a hero. You aren't a human.
You were just my gun. I cleaned you, oiled you, and fired you. And now, recess is over." A click on the tape, and then, "Eeeeee." Not just a beep, it was a signal, a powerful, resonant, ultrasonic pulse that pierced my brain like a red-hot spike. I fell to my knees, covering my ears with my hands. I screamed, but I couldn't hear myself. Pain burned away thought. Pain burned away the revolution. Pain erased Alex Volkov, the guy who liked rain and hated pills. The world narrowed to a single point. The sound of the sea faded. The sun dimmed. The trembling in my hands stopped. My face smoothed out. My eyes stopped darting and locked onto the horizon. Empty, glassy, dead. The squeal cut off. In the headphones, a dry, synthetic voice spoke. "Status, active, awaiting target coordinates, ready for deployment?" I slowly stood up, brushed the sand off my knees, adjusted my sunglasses. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no pain. "Ready," I said into the void.